good day.
Hi, Carlos. Good to see you.
My pleasure. How are you doing? How's everything going?
Good, good, good. Very excited to talk to you today.
Great. So this is not typical YouTube content for now, but it's a new series of videos with Arash that we will start now. Well, I will introduce my friend Arash. He's one of my best friends. He's serial entrepreneur. He has lived in 6 countries, speaks 9 languages, if I'm not wrong, maybe more. Yeah. His origins are from Persia, but he was born and raised in Italy. And at this moment, he's living in Oslo, Norway.
Yes, that's correct.
Well, why are we starting this video? Uh, all the time that we speak, there are many interesting topics that sometimes we ask ourselves if we could record these conversations that we have. I'm sure that mm, many golden nuggets will arise, isn't it?
Yes, yes, yes. That was the initial idea. Exactly. We have been speaking intensely about different topics of life and uh, business, self personal development, entrepreneurship for more than 8, 9 years now. And we said so many times we should record this, and finally we're here. We're making it happen. So hopefully somebody finds our conversations useful and can learn something from them.
Mhm. Totally. Well, we will introduce a little bit how we meet each other. It was in 2016 in Madrid when you and me were living in Madrid in an event of entrepreneurs, Guiripreneur. Guiri is called in Spain people who are foreign. The Spanish people, they tend um, to pronounce them as Guiri, isn't it?
Yes, yes. It's a Spanish way of saying a foreigner.
Exactly. And well, now you are living in Oslo, Norway. And tell me, Horace, what was your first impression of living in Madrid, and how does it differ from Oslo?
Yeah, so I was born and raised in Italy, in Tuscany, specifically a small town called Grosseto, the southern part of Tuscany, beautiful place near the beach. It's called Maremma, that region. And yeah, I've been living there until university, and then I went to study university in Florence. And then I lived in some other countries, 3 years in Argentina, 1 year in Brazil, 2 years in the US, in California, and then 9 years in Madrid. And Madrid basically happened a little bit by coincidence. I was visiting a friend, an Italian friend who was studying there with another friend of mine, and I just fell in love with the energy of the city. It was back in December 2013, and I just loved the city. It was so, bustling with new restaurants and events and people. Everybody was hanging out on the squares, the plazas, and I just loved it. And yeah, pretty much 2 weeks after that, I decided to move to Madrid for what was initially like a 3 months, 6 months test. And then that slowly turned into 9 years of my life, pretty much I would say the majority of my adult life. Because back then I was like 20, yeah, I was like 26, 27, something like that. And then I stayed there until, yeah, from 27 till 36. So 9 years of that, and that was amazing. And yeah, there's many differences with Oslo. First and foremost, the weather. Madrid is officially the sunniest capital of Europe in terms of days of sun, and also not only it's sunny, but it's like super sunny in the sense that there's usually no clouds. It's just a beautiful blue sky. It's a little bit too hot in the summers. That was one of the main reasons that kind of pushed me out of Madrid. I just couldn't stand the summers, and I think many people in Madrid often go to the beach or have another house in the mountains somewhere to escape the heat. But yeah, I kind of like realized through the years that I am able to resist the cold much better than the heat. Um, Yeah, my years in Madrid were amazing. I had no hard feelings with the city. It's a fantastic place to visit and to live in. Very low key. It doesn't feel like a capital. It feels like as kind of a small city in some ways, although it has 6.5 million inhabitants. Yeah, that was great. How about you? How did you feel when you lived in Madrid, and why did you leave Madrid?
Madrid for me is an awesome city because you can feel inside Spain. You can see all the typical Spanish aspects, but at the same time, it's a incredible international city. You feel like a world citizen, and at the same time, you can feel in a typical Spanish city at the same time. So the energy, the vibe, I think the energy of that city is of improvement, growth. I like that energy. In fact, Madrid is going to become one of the biggest financial cities in the world with new projects that are starting to get a reality, like a financial district that is going to be built in the north of Madrid, close to San Martin. So good, interesting years are coming by.
Absolutely, absolutely. Yeah,
Mhm.
beautiful city, and also the people are just amazing. The food, incredible.
Totally. Absolutely. And Horace, which aspects of Oslo's culture do you miss when you are in Madrid and vice versa, apart from the weather and so on? But
Well, when I'm visiting in Madrid, I have to say that one of the parts I admire the most about Norwegians is the fact that they're very civic people. They're like very, they understand this sense of community, this sense of respecting the environment and their own city. You can see about how clean the streets are, how polite and nice the people are when they're like letting you out of the bus first. So it's a very respectful society. Also in terms of silence, and they kind of feel like maybe having a call in the bus is something that you should try to avoid and have a call when you get off, or maybe, yeah. So they're a very civic, polite, and educated kind of society, and I think it works as a global enforcement because everybody's like this. So then more people are inclined to do that as a consequence. Whereas if more people are less kind of respectful to the others, then as a domino effect, you also might feel like doing the same. So, so yeah, that's one part. And when I am here in Oslo, what I miss about Madrid is the fact that it's so easy to socialize, and you can just go into a square. People will talk to you. The bartender or the waiter will talk to you. There's just this kind of will of gathering together, being together, even if different tables with people you don't know in a square, but you're all enjoying a wine or a beer or a coffee closely together, right? Even the distance of the tables are usually very compact. And so you have this idea of socializing, wanting to connect that is very present. Whereas I feel here in Norway, there is the desire of tranquility, peace. And so I feel many Norwegians on the weekends, they prefer to go to their cabins in the mountains or somewhere far away, or even the houses here in the city. Everything is very quiet after 5 p.m. Like you barely hear a noise, a sound. Yeah, people might be, inclined to listen to the TV at a lower volume, not to disturb their neighbors. But yeah, sometimes especially in the winter months when it's dark and cold, might also make you feel a bit lonely. This fact that everybody's very reserved and maybe generally more introverted or shy in a way. Of course, I'm generalizing. Not everyone is like this,
Mhm.
but definitely you need to make a little bit of an effort to make friends, new friends.
Mhm. Absolutely. It's a totally different world compared to Madrid, I see.
Yeah, even if it's Europe and geographically at least, because Norway is not part of the European Union, but it's part of the European commercial territory.
Mhm.
Uh, it's very different from many other places I lived in. So the whole Scandinavian culture in general, both Finland, Iceland, Sweden as well, it has a lot of very differences, but I see also a lot of richness in the differences. I don't see them as a negative thing. I see them as what is the inherent lesson that this new culture can teach you. Um, so so yeah, it's curious. It's curious to see the different layers of a culture through time, the history, the politics, the music, the literature, the theater, yeah, there's like so many different aspects of a culture that especially if you then start to understand the language a little bit, the slang, the jokes, the traditions, but there are in every culture, there is like some inherent morale, there's an inherent lesson to be learned. And I think that's the beauty or a way to see, the glass half full instead of saying, I live in Norway, I'm from Tuscany, oh, the beach, oh, the weather, oh, the great food, I miss that so much. This place is bad. Like, I don't know. And it's also so cheap nowadays to just grab a flight and in 2 hours, I can be anywhere that yeah, it's so I'm very much enjoying being here. Um, but yeah, it does feel like a different planet sometimes.
Totally. And in winter, how do you manage and adapt? Because it's pretty cold. Sometimes snow is for a couple of months, isn't it? How do you adapt to not feel the bad negative aspects that it will maybe have on their personality? Because here in Spain, it is said, oh, with this weather, people will feel depressed. But I don't think so. I've been living in Lithuania for 1 year and I adapt very, very quickly. So I didn't feel that when I was living in North Europe.
Yeah, absolutely. So there's many things that you need to learn when you live in a dark and cold country. So I arrived here in January 2023. So this means that this is technically my third winter here. Um, And first of all, there's some basic obvious ones, like you need to take more vitamin D, and you need to take an amount of vitamin D that is both based on your skin color. I'm not trying to be racist here, but meaning that I have, my parents are from Iran, so I have a quite dark color of skin, which makes me absorb less sunlight. And that's also an interesting thing, that if people here have very light skin, but it helps them absorb more vitamin D actually, right? So the more dark your skin, the more you're resistant to the sun. But if you live at this altitudes, you don't want to be resistant to the sun. You want to be as open as possible so you can actually absorb some of that vitamin D. So if I have dark skin at this altitude, then I need to take much higher quantity of vitamin D than, for example, my girlfriend who's Norwegian, actually 4 times as much. So she's taking like 20 micrograms of vitamin D per day. I need to take 80 micrograms of vitamin D per day. So that's one thing, is like, take vitamin D, yes. How much and how often, right? Like you can take, there's also other types of vitamin Ds that you can take every 2 weeks and so forth. So you need to experiment with brands and types and the quantity. And once you hit the right amount, you will feel your energy is kind of back, right? And by the way, for everyone who's listening, I tested my vitamin D also when I was living in Madrid. And I also was vitamin D deficient in Madrid, because I was working, with an office job. So I wasn't like spending too much time outside, or perhaps I wasn't like consciously staying in the sun, right, for 30 minutes or an hour, direct sunlight. Also remember, in the wintertime, only your face and your hands are exposed to the sun, which is not enough of your body surface to actually absorb whatever vitamin D you need. So vitamin D is one. Doing exercise and movement, whether it's walking for 30 minutes or an hour outside, in total, like, so it can be 15 minutes, 20 minutes, a few times per day, but at least move your body a little bit, move your ass. Um, And even better if you can do some like high intensity cardio that will prompt and move your energy even more. It will help your blood circulation, your oxygen, because just like animals at this latitudes in winter, you do feel the push towards, like, I want to stay in bed a little bit longer. I would like to be in the on my couch with my blanket and just watch Netflix a little bit longer. Like you feel that pull towards the cave and resting, right? And conserving your calories and your energies. So you have to kind of counteract that. There are some special lamps that are called light therapy lamps, which I honestly haven't tried yet, but it's next on my list to try as well because other foreigners that have been living here told me that it's a good investment. They're not expensive. There's something like, 50, 60 euros, and it's a normal lamp like this, just a classic LED lamp, but it is at a special frequency. So it's 100 hertz light frequency. So if you look at it, it just looks like a normal lamp, but just like a square thing. You need to keep it quite close to your face. Like you must have it at 20, 30 centimeters from your face, so not further, quite close, and a minimum of 30 minutes a day. So maybe I would say while you have breakfast, you can just keep it there, right? Or some women I've seen use it when they wear makeup as a makeup lamp. So, you're getting double benefits in that sense. And that special frequency of light mimics the sun frequency. So again, if you look at it, you're not going to be able to, it's not like particularly shining or super strong, but it mimics the sun frequency. And that sends basically a message to your brain to release a one-time cortisol injection to your brain, which tells your brain that it's day, right? So it's basically a message to your brain to say, hey, it's daytime, activate, wake up, get ready, function. It's time to get up. And that's extremely important for your evening time because the moment your brain understands it's daytime, which is not consciously, you can't see the clock and say, oh, it's 7 a.m. I guess it's daytime. No, that's your brain understanding, like your consciousness understanding it's daytime, but your body and your physiology needs to also understand it's daytime. And that happens with a particularly bright light at a specific frequency. So that's why this light therapy lamp. So that helps you because then roughly 16 hours after that, you're going to get the melatonin release. So once you get the first cortisol release in the morning, once your brain says, yeah, it's actually daytime, let's go, then about 16 hours later, you get the melatonin start, which makes you sleepy and makes you fall asleep. So because here the sun actually comes out around 9 or 9:30 a.m., so it's like pitch dark at 9 a.m. sometimes, then until it actually gets high and strong enough, and sometimes it's cloudy and so forth, like you might get that signal to your brain around 10 or 10:30, which is then will make you feel sleepy very late, and that can just like mess up with you. So that's, again, it's a 50 euro investment. It's not that much, right? Like you can try it, and I'm definitely willing to try and I'm actively looking to buy one soon. So sports, vitamin D, light therapy. I think some light music, is like you have to actively try to, make yourself a little bit upbeat and, some lively music. Don't isolate yourself. Like, can you? I'm extremely a social extrovert, right? So I love hosting people, making dinners, and having people around, creating communities and groups, connecting, and also having this, meaningful, deep conversations with people that are smart like you. Um, so don't isolate yourself, even if you're gonna feel like, oh, it's Friday night, it's 5 p.m. I really just want to have a frozen pizza and watch, some TV series. Try to get out there, try to be with people, try to organize something, even if it's not at your house. Just like go out, see what's happening. Maybe there's an exposition, maybe there's a movie, there's something. Just like try to make yourself active and doing some fun things. Um, and another option, of course, if you have the money or the time, is to escape the winter. Like so many people in the Scandinavia, um, just spend 5 days, 7 days, 10 days in Portugal, Morocco, Thailand, you know, Caribbean islands, the Canary Islands is a big one as well, Mallorca. So just go out, and have a week of summer if you can, maybe across the Christmas time. That's an option. And then the biggest one, I would say, is something that every single Norwegian I met told me the first week I arrived, which was fall in love with winter sports. Like you have to. I remember a dear Norwegian friend of mine just actually brought me to a shop, helped me choose cross country skiing. Cross country, this kind of ski where you just walk on the skis. Technically, your heels are detached from your skis. Um, it's very fun, relatively easy to do, also because it's quite flat most of the time, so you don't have the adrenaline of going downhill. Um, so he just brought me to a shop, said like, "We're buying you skis." Like he didn't ask me, like, "Okay, this one is a good model. Buy this one. You need this clothing. You need this hat. These are the gloves. These are the sticks. Let's go." And the next weekend, he brought me out to ski. Taught me the basics. I knew downhill skiing, so I was like quite familiar with snow in general. And that was a big one, because, for example, yesterday was an amazing sunny day, and it was great to go out and ski. You spend the day outside. It doesn't have to be too long. Like you can ski for an hour. Then there's some beautiful cabins placed at very strategic points where maybe after an uphill. So you do this uphill, you're tired, and then boom, there's a beautiful cabin with a cafe. They can serve you lunch. They can serve you hot chocolate. They have beautiful, amazing buns, that you can eat and just recharge. There's a fireplace welcoming you, so you can just take your clothes off, rest in a warm and cozy environment, and you can stay there for another 30 minutes, an hour, and then you ski back. And the whole thing, took you 3, 4 hours. You had some sun. You did, you did some exercise. So kind of starting to like some winter sports, whether it's ski, cross country ski, snowboard, even just hiking. Something outdoors in the winter will make all the difference. Um,
Mhm.
and I can go on, but like I think these are the main ones. Yes.
Mhm. Interesting for those who may consider visit Norway or living there. Yeah. Another interesting topic that I would like to touch that will be very useful for our listeners is about the professional side. It's an area that usually we speak, and you and I, we came from very different um, backgrounds. You study tourism, I studied human resources, economy, and fitness. And sometimes people study an university degree for a work that doesn't exist anymore. Everything is changing rapidly, in a more exponential rate. And sometimes people they are going to look for a job, and it's very challenging, the world nowadays, because there are no rules. I think that we should see ourselves like a company, yeah, a company that is going to provide value to the world or wherever it is, not anymore like an employee who works at a fixed hourly rate and that's it. Yeah, it's just a commodities, and in the world we live, I think AI will put things, I don't think more difficult, but more excited. Yeah. How do you see work nowadays in this professional aspect?
Yeah, I agree with you. You're right. I feel the world is changing at 5x, the speed of before. So everything is changing so rapidly. Everything is happening, right? We saw NVIDIA this year explained the novelties of AI in early January. Then DeepSeek came in. The Chinese player kind of revolutionized the whole paradigm of how AI models could be made, how fast, how cheap. And everything is changing so hard, and then sense making is becoming harder. How do you make sense of the world? How do you make sense of your career evolution, of your studies, right? Like, how can you predict or try to predict what is going to happen in the near future? So what should you study? Am I sure that if I study medicine and invest 8 years of my time and a lot of money, that at the end, 8 to 10 years later, I'm actually going to have a very good job, a very good salary, and a fulfilling career? Or is some AI new medicine model or robot even gonna, be more effective at my place? I believe that the solution to this is to ground yourself more in who you are and understanding more who you are, because I've tried it to read everything I could and be as updated as I could on so many different topics and try to make sense of the world and the news. And there's so many controversial topics also that there's fake news about them, so it's quite hard to get real information. Even if you spend a lot of time reading news on the right hand side of the news or the left hand side of the news, it's just hard. Mm. And therefore, I believe that, like, getting back to the core of who you are and understanding what you like, what are your innate skills and passions and talents, and how can you leverage them in a unique way, what makes you uniquely you, right? And of course, there's probably going to be some refinement of that, some studying, some mastery, or mastering of some new skills and knowledge, and years of investment to be done. But as long as you're really loyal and truthful to yourself and what are your desires and your core values, and I think a lot of those things are usually present in your early years. When you were 5, when you were 7, I suppose, your mom, your brothers, your friends used to all already see those innate aspects, right? Maybe you were a kid that was particularly creative or particularly funny or particularly energetic. What were those core principles that were there right at the beginning, right? And perhaps they became like a common thread through your life. So I think it's basically otherwise in keep up with the continuous advancements. Like, I suppose that a little bit you should be aware of what's happening in the world. Like, I think, we're now in 2025. If by now a person has never even tried any AI model, whether it's ChatGPT or Perplexity or DeepSeek or something else, like, at least to try it, given the fact that it's free and you can just download an app from your phone and see what it can do for you. That's, for me, it's like a must, right? Whether you work in IT or you're a 65-year-old person, you need to understand what this AI thing is, and what it can do. But yeah, it's a beautiful question. I think it's a hard one to answer, because there's so many aspects of the world moving, that I think in order for all of this variables and spheres and wars and chips and economy and tariffs and this president or that president, or somebody did this movement on a conference or another movement, just I think it's much easier to just understand are ground yourself in your values, understand what are your values, what do you want to achieve in life, both from a personal preference perspective, like, I would just like to live near the beach, or I would just like to live near the forest, I would like to have a dog, whatever it is. And basically, start from there instead of trying to scope and scan the world, make sense of that, and then find the best strategy through this so many moving pieces, right? Because who you are and what you like and what you want to achieve in life is unlikely to change, whether some country 10,000 kilometers away from you decides to do X, right? Like, so that's much more in your control. And those are areas where you can sort of start to have influence on. You can influence your own life. You can influence your own actions. You cannot influence that the world is going through, a AI evolution, an AI driven technology world where for sure a lot of jobs will be sadly destroyed. And I'm not happy about this. I'm not justifying this, but it's going to happen the same way the internet did, right? I remember, just to put like a real life anecdote, when I was living in central Madrid in a neighborhood called La Latina, which is in the downtown part of it, there was this small little shop run by this like 60-year-old man who's probably been there for 10 or 15 years, from what I could tell from the look of the shop. Very small shop. And it was really like the neighborhood technology shop. Sold like a toaster, a fan, a keyboard, a heater, just like a mouse, maybe some light bulbs, just like really basic technology that everybody would need. And um sadly, I saw the shop close after some years. I was trying to support the shop and buy from, if I needed something, I would first try to go and buy it there. But of course, if there's like Amazon, who has, instead of three toaster to that you can choose from, it has 1,000 options, and then it's easy to rank. Um, what are the main ones that are mostly top seller, and maybe the price is better. And on top of that, you can just click a button, and tomorrow morning it will be delivered to your doorstep, pretty much. It's very hard to beat that compelling offer, right? And of course, that man in La Latina with his like kind of electronic appliances shop was competing with a gigantic corporate behemoth who has billions, right? And who created a whole infrastructure of logistics to make sure that you get that level of service that it's impossible to compete with. I hope I'm not sounding like this like extreme right-wing capitalist, because I'm sorry about that man going out of business. But again, like once the technology and the logistics reach that level, it becomes impossible to compete. The same way WordPress and graphic designers and website designers, like if it's as it's already now becoming so easy that I can just talk to my phone and say, "Hi, I would need a website that looks like this, like this, like this, with this images and this text," and a machine just makes it happen in 5 minutes for free. I would then need to be aware of that if I'm a website designer, and try to adjust, right, and see how I can add more value to that. There's always more value creation that can be done, right? And I think a supermarket is a great example. Or if just take wood, for example. Like you can have a forest, and your job is, I own a forest and I produce wood, right? And somebody comes and cuts some of those trees, and then they do something with it. And then those people can take the wood, right? And they cannot grow the trees, but they can process the trees, right? And they add more value to the tree, to the wood. And so they maybe cut the trees, they store them, they dry them, right? And they clean them, and then you have these big logs, right? And you have lots of wood stored, dried, ready to use. And then I can be another person, and I can take those logs and I can make little pieces of wood, right? Like at like a clean, perfect size. So then it's easy to build with wood, whatever I need. I have thinner, I have thicker, larger, smaller, all the size you want. And you can keep buy these logs pre-cut at the right size, and it's much faster for you to build anything with wood. And then, of course, I can build something with wood. I can make a little house with wood. I can make furniture with wood, right? I can even make amazing furniture with wood. And that would be the ultimate like example of value creation, right? But it still comes from that same raw material. Same with supermarkets, as I was saying, like you can grow food, or you can, spinach, for example. I think it's a beautiful example of value creation. Like growing spinach is something, then having a distribution shop that sells you the spinach. And then on top of that, you can have a bag of spinach which is washed, bean, and you can just, open it in a plastic, nice, clean container. Just pour it in your bowl at home and have a spinach salad or whatever you want to do with the spinach. But all of these things are trying to increase the price of spinach, which is like, okay, we have spinach. Everybody's eating spinach, nothing very innovative about it. And then it's just like, okay, how can I increase the price and the value of spinach? So I think that's amazing. And I believe we can do that with ourselves too. If you're clear about who you are, what you want, and how can you increase the value creation of yourself. And also, I think it's shifting the mindset from, instead of being selfish and saying, how can I make more money? Right? How can I have a remote life and work in Thailand on the beach, work 20 hours a week? Like, instead of having the me kind of mindset, if for 1 second you put yourself into, okay, how can I help this company? How can I help these individuals? What is innate in me? And me and you speak often about the ikigai concept, which I would love for you to explain as well. So what do I have to share? How can I serve, right? How can I give back? What is my secret sauce that nobody else has, that makes me uniquely me? So I'm not a commodity. I'm not just one business developer out of many. I'm not a programmer out of many. I'm not a, I don't know, accountant out of many. What is very special about me and unique about me? And how can I actually give it to someone else and serve it? Um, I think that's a mindset that I rarely see, but the people who have this, I really want to help you, I really want to have a win-win situation. It's not just like, how do I profit from you as much as I can? But I would love for you to explain also about the ikigai concept for those who are not very familiar with it, and also if there's any relationship from personal branding and value creation. What are your thoughts on this one?
Yeah, very interesting topic. I will go one step back. Like you read in the Almanac, the book of Naval Ravikant, we have each of us, we have a unique ADN of characteristics, experience that we have lived that translate into certain skills and personality traits that are unique. What do we have to do in this case, in my experience? First of all, assess ourselves, our strengths, our weakness. Many times we need the word to help us, like personal development, skills, tools that help us to do that. But how do we relate to the ikigai? The ikigai is the confluction, I don't know how to say with exact words, of our strengths, what we like and we are good at, and also what the world can pay us. Yeah, this is in a very simple way to explain. And that's the challenge, how to translate that into the real life. Yeah, because in the theory we can write it, but one aspect I admire in you, and also you see in myself, is that we have the capacity to be generalist, what is called multipotential. Yeah, but at the same time we can be very good at certain specific parts, yeah, and also be generalist. Why I consider it so important to master this, because the world, it evolves in an incredibly speed. And imagine one person who is very specialist, maybe something in the world changes and it doesn't exist anymore. That specific task that the person has been trained or focused during his whole life. That's why it's so important to have personal development tools, having the capacity to know ourselves, doing self-assessments, try to see things in a different perspective. Yeah. How do you see that? I know it's a very broad topic that can be split into many specific ones, but I think it's very important, yeah, to open this huge book.
Yeah, segue. Yeah, I'm super passionate about this, right? And we've been also discussing this for I don't know how many hundreds of hours, me and you. And I just also wanted to publicly take the occasion to thank you about your friendship because it's probably one of the things that enriched my life the most. Um, I think the concept of having valid interlocutors is so important in life, for those who are intellectually curious. Having people that you can sit down and speak with for 2-3 hours and exchange ideas, not necessarily change your ideas. It's just like a sparring partner, right? Like I compare it often to like playing ping pong. Is like, how good will you be playing ping pong against the wall, right? At home, just to practice, right? You're practicing against the wall. And I think that's how we are in our heads often. We just think of ideas on our own, and maybe you're not getting anywhere. Maybe you're not taking a decision when you're faced with a yes or no, this or that kind of decision. But if you have a valid interlocutor, you can actually kind of like go play with these ideas, right? And like go deep and see, and maybe you come up with different conclusions for yourself, not because I want to convince you to change your mind or you want to convince me to buy your ideas. Yeah, so this topic I'm extremely fascinated about, like the vision of reality. There's this kind of meditation protocol called Vipassana that I'm super passionate about, and it's basically a 2,500-year-old meditation method technique. Vipassana in Old Pali means penetrative vision, and basically it's a protocol that is aimed at teaching you how to try to assess slightly better reality, right? If supposedly, ancient traditions, if you can see reality as it is, that would be called enlightened, right? So if you're an enlightened person, is you can actually see reality. Now, you can try also to be as close as possible to enlightenment, to put light on things that you don't see very well, and hopefully you can see them with more clarity. And I think this is the starting point, having the humility to first of all not say this is the truth, right? Like, let me tell you how things are, and instead saying, I probably have my opinions, I have my biases. I was born and raised in a specific country by specific parents. I read a certain types of book, I had some teachers, I had some friends. All of this influenced me so that I have a set of software in my operating system that makes me see reality with a pair of lens, right? And this lens might be of any given color. It's probably not 100% transparent, right? So maybe I see reality a little bit more blue or yellow or green, and you see it of a different color. So I think this is the starting point, having some intellectual humility to say, I see things in my view, with my perspective, with my biases, and how can I try to see things more clearly. Now, I think when you're relating to someone else, you can just straight up ask them, like, hey, I have this impression, I have this opinion, or this bother me because of this. It's probably my problem. It's probably my past or my traumas or my upbringing that made me suffer because of this thing you said. Like, I want to ask you, like, did you mean it this way? Did you say it like that to hurt me on purpose? Or it's probably me misinterpreting. So I think just openly asking and having that kind of humble approach helps. Um, but yeah, I think it helped me so much, right? To kind of see the world and then often, take a step back and say, oh, probably I'm having this cynical, negative view of what's happening out there in the world, but it might not be true. Also might not be true the opposite. If you're a happy-go-lucky person and you think everything is fantastic and great, like having this kind of skepticism that also doesn't make you doubt anything, not the excessive skepticism either, but having this idea that like I probably will never be able to assess the reality of certain things at 100% clarity level. I read often The Economist, this famous business magazine that comes out weekly, and if you read it, you can see how extremely intelligent people, top business economists from all over the world, are trying to make sense of the world economy. It's such a complicated thing. There's like political interests, cultural interests, geographical interests, right? Like I might want to have some of your resources because they're physically in that territory, so that I quite care about that territory. Maybe historical reasons, like, oh, this land used to be mine, so it's important for me to take it back. So there's so many reasons about why the economy works the way it does. And then there's like a million small pieces that are moving independently. And nobody actually, not even a government, is able to control entirely their economy, right? Like China will never be able to tell the people produce only this good, right? Or don't sell this, or don't sell to that country. Yeah, you can play with tariffs. You can incentivize by lowering taxes, and say, okay, in this region, if you build car industry in this region, it's zero tax. And then many car manufacturers move there to build their car there. So you can push a little bit, right? Like you can increase interest rates or decrease to speed up or slow down inflation or the economy. But you can't really control this thing. It's kind of like fluid. It's going on its own, right? People buy things they like, and stop buying when they're afraid. They think the economic environment is unsafe. They're like, let me just save some money now. Let's buy that car in 6 months or a year, maybe. So I think this idea of how can I try to work on my blind spots? How can I talk to someone like that I trust, right? That I think is good willing towards me and say, this is what I would do. Like I have this hunch, right? I lived in Madrid for 9 years. I'm considering going to Norway to live. I don't know if it's a crazy idea. I just feel like it. What do you think? These are the reasons that I am in favor of this idea, and these are my fears for not moving to Norway and maybe stay where I am or going somewhere else. And then, through this kind of art of dialectics and dialogue, you can explore an idea and try to make sense of it. And maybe you say something, or what I believe is the most useful part of discussing, and why I think also psychological therapy or coaching therapy is useful, is that if I have a problem, I can explain it to you. And of course, you can give me your insights and your tips, but it's the actual process of me breaking down the situation for you that clarifies it to me as well. It's like I have this big ball of wool and I'm trying to pull the thread. Like I'm trying to unknot this big knot that I have. And by explaining to you, hey, here's my situation. This is the context. This is my goal. And this is the kind of rules or doubts that I have. Maybe it's expensive. Maybe it's emotionally costly. Maybe my parents are against this idea, whatever it is. What do you think? And then maybe you ask me questions to understand my situation better. And that is clarifying to me. If on top of that, the person in front of you is also, again, good willing, they want the best for you. And they're also, well, that's just better, because then they might actually give you some ideas and insights that you haven't thought of. So yeah, I'm extremely interested about like this vision of reality. How do you see, like, how do you deal with hard decisions in life, and how do you assess if your analysis of the situation is correct? How do you even balance the emotional side in you versus the logical, rational, analytical side of you?
Yeah, it's very interesting topic because it has been a challenge and a learning process through all my life. And one thing I try to do is to now how to read my intuition. Yeah, going as deep as possible, because one thing I have concluded, not just because I have read it in many personal spiritual books like David Hopkins, Buddhism, the Bible, and Stoicism, how to use your mind so that it doesn't destroy you. And that's why it's so important, personal development, and also now how to see our blind spots. Because if you just go through the motions of the emotions, and the rational mind is limited. Yeah, intuition, I think, is infinite. Yeah, as you can see, the enlightenment, like Buddha and or David Hopkins, like we know. Well, we have read them, we haven't know in person. Yeah, not in this life, but I think the goal is to transcend and achieve those conscious levels while being able to be functional in this material world. I think that's the challenge, because I think our internal demons, and also the reflection that we encounter in the daily life, when we when we go with the family, the society, all the challenge that life put us. And one thing I have aspect, maybe people that they listen to us, they will think, oh, those guys, they speak very evolved. Well, at this moment, maybe, but we have been in the darkness too many years ago. Many years ago. In fact, I think some part of us is see personal development so useful is because it has helped us, yeah, to transcend. Yeah, and it's so important. I put an analogy of when you take decisions based just on the emotions or in a rational loop, a mental trap. Is like if you are in a bank of fog. Yeah, when you are in the fog and you think, oh, I can see anything, and the translation of this is you have a limited perspective based on a conscious level with negative thoughts, depressed, anxious states. You will see reality in a certain way. That's why it's so important to have a different perspective. Maybe someone who takes you with the hand and makes you see this is just a fog bank. Reality is, it's much more about it. There is sunny out there. Yeah, there is sunny out there, and also I see life like seasons: winter, summer, spring. You must know how to live each of these. Yeah, life itself is like that. There are happy moments. There are moments where are not so happy, when family members are not there anymore, and it will happen. Yeah, and that's one thing that when you live it, and you integrate it, it makes you to see things in a different perspective. The thing I have learned about it is that you can learn all these skills, all these tools, before the hard moments came, because hard moments, they will arrive. 100% sure. Yeah, and for example, in my opinion, I think, for example, reading Stoicism, David Hopkins, it helped me to live life much better without unnecessary suffering. Yeah, because like Buddha said, pain is inevitable, but suffering is optional, and that's so fucking true. Yeah, because with hard things I have lived in my life, I'm conscious that, because having those tools, they have made me to live life more, how to say, I don't know how to say in English, amortiguar, when you fall and there is
more
you
balanced,
suffer,
more
you suffer.
Softer landing.
Exactly, you softer landing, you suffer, but inside of you, you feel that, oh, I'm sure I would suffer much, much more if I didn't have those tools of personal development.
Can we now define for a second what do you mean by personal development? What is self-development? What does it mean to know one person better? Because it's such a broad word, right? And I think often it's also for some people not well seen, like, oh, the self-help book, I'm gonna scream in the shower, I can do it, right? Or I'm gonna put a post-it in my kitchen that I'm gonna become a millionaire. And like, I think it has some negative connotations out there in the mainstream. So what is self-development for you?
Yeah, for me, at this moment is having practical tools that help you move and live through the complexities of this world. Yeah. And it's not easy. Yeah. I have read many books. You can see some of them here. There are many out there. Yeah. And I can highly recommend certain books. For example, all books of David Hopkins. Yeah. Stoicism, yeah, and parts of the Bible and Buddhism, but you need sometimes to know how to interpret them, yeah, because if not, for example, I know people that they read books of David Hopkins and they say, "Oh, I don't understand anything." Maybe they are not in the moment to understand it. Yeah, I ask that person, well, are you living a happy life? Are you suffering? If you are happy, if you don't suffer, so you don't need to read that book, yeah. But when hard moments hit, if those hard moments break you into pieces, yeah, then you will need it. If not, I have seen that in many people, yeah, they come in the hardships of life, and then you will say if you need it or not, yeah. But in my opinion, reading all those kind of books, also certain packs at certain parts of my journey, I need the help of some integrators. I mean, people like a therapist that help you to integrate your current state into those new reality perspectives that you need to put onto yourself. And how do you say it?
Yeah, yeah. One thing that I've always been incredibly fascinated about something that you do, which I admit I don't do as much, is that I've heard you often reread some books, right? Which I also thought is such a humble approach to knowledge and to learning and also to integrating. Like you said, like it helps you interpret and integrate some of this concept, but like you do this often, and I've just like admired it so much because like I think you also take some notes sometimes, and I think it is a true way to go deeper into some of those books that are dense. First of all, because I suppose if you read 10 books, you're not gonna like find all of them relevant and neither like all of them. And maybe some of them are actually not relevant to your state in that moment. So why do you reread books? How do you choose like which one to reread? And those that you do not read again, why is it? And if you can also say, like, I don't know if there are some books that you reread particularly, more often. I know some people reread books once a year, some of them as a reminder. Like, can you just tell me a little bit more about that?
Yeah, in fact, there are books that they have clues. For example, the Bible, it's still one of the most reading books. Yeah. Also, books like the Bhagavad Gita that you gave to me is one of those. It's quite dense, so I'm into it. And also the David Hopkins books. Those are books that, I mean, if you need answers in life, books also like the ones of the Stoicism, I think it's very critical to have a life philosophy. yeah, and values. Those are the pillars, yeah. And when you have strong foundations and strong pillars, you don't need anything else. Yes, you can complement with details, yeah, personal development details, tools. There are many of them, yeah. But let's don't forget about the roots, the foundations, the pillars. Those are the most important, yeah. And through experience, I've realized that certain books, they have the truth or the basics, the pillars, whoever you want to name it. And before I discovered those books, for example, David Hopkins, I was kind of innocent. I was very, how to say, easy to, I don't know how to say, impress. Yeah. And also I was reading quite based on the ego. Oh, I have read that book. So I can say that I can say people that I have read that book, so that I'm an interesting person, so that I'm looking for validation. Yeah, you go inside, and when you observe yourself, like your server, the ego, is like, who the hell are you going to lie? Yeah, and you can't lie yourself anymore, because deep inside of you, one part of yourself, it will feel not so good. Yeah. And also you must be able to you must be able, in my experience, to control your mind, yeah, because there are many dopamine. The dopamine is for me one part of the mind that is there. If you don't control it, it can fuck you up. Oh, I need novelty, one new book. I like this cover. I like this cover of the book. I like the title. Yeah, it will promise me to do that. Yeah. And also is very related to nowadays, the dopamine of the TikTok, Instagram, YouTube. You must be able to control yourself so that you don't get trapped in this dopamine rush that can be applied to the Instagram reel or the book you see in the bookstore, and you are tempted to buy it. That's why sometimes it's best, in my experience, to take one good book, read it as many times as until you integrate it. Yeah, because if you integrate that book, it will be one part of your pillar, your foundation. Yeah, that's why it's so important, in my opinion.
Well, what is integrating? What does it mean to integrate a knowledge? Like,
Yeah.
what parts of a book do you integrate, and how do you do that? Like, let's say I want to integrate a lesson from a book. For example, there is actually a book that I have read some years ago, which is called The Path of the Superior Man from David Deida, which, if I'm not wrong, it's a book that you suggested me first. And I love that book. And recently, someone on LinkedIn mentioned it again. And I was like, yeah, I want to read that again. It's been now for some years. I kind of lost or forgot the main ideas. I have a bare, of course, I read it with attention. So I have a bare understanding of what the book is about, but I would love to reread it. Right. So I just ordered it. And the first time I listened to the audiobook, and now I'm going to read it this time. So how do you structure integrating knowledge from book, and which parts of the book, and like do you have a structure on how to do this? Like, for example, I know some people highlight with colors, some people take notes, some people put like some colorful stickers on the side of the book, so it's like, oh, this part is interesting. Some people don't highlight at all, but they highlight just some words, so very specific about how. I know other friends also have like some codes, like, okay, a triangle means this, some sides marks means that. I even know that some books, for example, come with a white side on the one side, so you can actually take notes on the book as well, like a workbook, like actually using the book. So how do you approach integrating, like for people who don't read much and want to read more, or like also how do you choose which book and when to reread it, or is it just like a feeling that is like, oh, this book is calling me? Do you even, I don't know, do you sometimes go and look at all your past books and say, this one maybe? How do you approach that process?
Yeah. I think if you are asking yourself, is that book will be useful for you or not, you must see in which point of life you are at, and also which are those strong and weak points, and those lessons that you may need to learn at the stage of life you are at. Asking your question about integration of books, if you are able to live the lessons that that book is teaching you, and also you know how to explain to others the core principles of that book, you are then you have been able to integrate it. If not, you haven't learned anything. I think that's the key, to know if you have been able to integrate a book or not.
Because it's also like, if you think about it for a second, I know I listen to a lot of books, right? I prefer listening because I can do it when I'm walking, when I'm at the supermarket, when I'm cooking, when I'm at the gym. So I can like just go through a lot more books. And another thing I like about listening to audiobooks is that the guy who's reading is not going to stop. So he just continues. And this is a reminder to get back your focus into this. Whereas sometimes when I'm reading very thought-provoking books, like the sentences or the concepts are so strong that I'm like reading, and then for a second I look out of the window and I'm like, wow, that's like powerful. I need to process that for a second, right? Or you think about how that applies to your life and you're like, wow, that's an interesting idea. Let me, like, I had a similar and then you kind of like, right, you might go
Yeah.
away for do you want to say something?
Yeah. I want to complement this. It's very important. Audiobooks are excellent tool. Yeah. The thing is that as soon as you notice something that is like an aha moment, you need to stop it, process it, and then take notes or whatever. Yeah. In that way, I think you can be able to process audiobooks. Yeah. Because if not, it may be a way of entertain your mind. Yeah, because one thing I have noticed in myself is that, oh, it's so difficult to be in silence with myself. I can't. I need something. I need something to listen, to speak. And with audiobooks, one thing I have noticed is that every time I have an aha moment, or that's very interesting topic, I need to stop it, take note of that part, and then proceed. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. So I also, Alex Hormozy, I've heard this famous, I don't know how we can call him, like a businessman, investor,
Businessman.
sales expert. He's the founder of acquisition.com. So he also says that he listens to audiobooks while he's reading the book. I thought that was so powerful. I know it's a bit hardcore, like for all us normal people out there to buy the audiobook and buy the book and do both things at the same time. But I admit I haven't tried it yet, but I can't wait to do it. I think that's very powerful, especially if you can understand, if you're a visual person or if you're an auditive person, but mixing the two, no matter what is your preference, I think it's extremely powerful. And but one thing I wanted to say is that most books I listen to are 15 to 20 hours long, right? And of course, I'm not listening them in one go, so it takes me like a month or so to maybe go through an audiobook. Maybe the best case is 2 weeks, but sometimes it's 6 weeks. But I believe, of course, if you're actually reading the book, the same exact book, it's going to be more, right? It's not going to be 15, 20 hours of reading. It's going to be more hours because, again, as we said, you get distracted. Maybe you stop more. You don't even also have as many occasions to listen to it and to actually sit down and read as much as you can actually, you know, in the bus, in the metro, walking, and again, supermarket, cooking, as you can read. So it's going to take you more time. Therefore, in nowadays, where we feel like we're in a society where there's less time, or lacking time all of a sudden, perhaps as a scarcity mindset, everybody says, no, I'm busy, I don't have time. Sorry, maybe in a month or so. Which makes me some of the most rich and abundant and happy people I know, they always have time. Why is that? Like, I think there's a big correlation between how you perceive reality and your time with everything else, right? If you think you have the time to do things in life, to work out, to read, then you probably have time for an energy and abundance for a lot of other stuff. So, but it is still a big investment. Like, even if it's 15 hours or 30 hours, reading a book, it's a big investment of your time. So, um, so I think that's also one of the reasons why I believe people are not reading all that much, right? Like, there's so much competition. Like, I should look at this TV series that it's new released on Netflix. I should work out. I should do this. I should do that. Mm, I wanted to ask you about this. What do you think about book summaries? You know that there's some companies that say, hey, don't read a book. Don't waste those 15, 30 hours reading, listening, whatever you want. I'll just give you a 15-minute summary, right? And here's a PDF or a graphic, or maybe there's these hands that draw you the book, right, to express the whole idea. And there's big businesses just trying to explain a book to you in 10 or 20 minutes, many different ways. You can listen to a book summary, you can look at the PDF book summary, you can read 10 or 15 pages, which is a really good, well-made summary of the book. And I tend to agree in some ways. This is something I'm not so clear about, so that's why I ask you. I agree that often you read a book, and the book is actually 5 powerful core ideas. Very powerful, very core. Is this that you extrapolate these 5 ideas into an introduction, an anecdote, an explanation, a conclusion. Okay, that's chapter 1. And then you have more chapters, and then, this is like 8 chapters, and then you put in a little bit more, filling here and there, and you easily get to 150, 200 pages, which is the average of any book, right? But at the end of the book, that's what I'm like shocked about. And I think that's why a lot of people stop reading and or don't read much or at all. And then most of them, I would say really 1% of the people are like you, who then say, no, actually, let me squeeze that concept and that book further because I found it valuable. Just the books I really liked, of course, not every book. But by the end of a book, like a week later, if you would ask me, okay, you finished that book, took you a month to read it here and there, in your free time. Can you summarize the book to me? Like, what did you learn out of that book? 3 ideas, right? Isn't it like mind blowing that it feels like 90% of everything you read, poof, just like vanished?
Yeah,
Um,
very
why is
interesting.
that? Why is that? And what do you think about book summaries? Because I have another friend who's like, please don't give me a book as a gift. Thank you for the recommendation. I'm not going to read the book, but do tell me the title and the author, and I'm going to give it to ChatGPT and ask it with a specific, handmade prompt to give me like a breakdown of the core ideas, the summary, the principles, and I'm just going to read that. And that's where I disagree. Like, I don't think that we live in a world where we should just read book summaries and that's it. Or is it true? Like, or should we, just read? Because of course, if I read a 15-page book summary, then of course I can read 200 of them per year.
Mhm.
What is your opinion on this? And how does this compare to like deeply integrating a book, reading it again, and taking notes?
Mhm. Yeah, very interesting topic. I think it depends on the book. If if a book is quite superficial, and also it depends about the intention that the author put while creating and writing that book. Yeah, if that author just wrote that book to have some how to say status, and it's like a copy paste, like a Frankenstein of other ideas, maybe a book summary is useful for that book. But it depends. For example, more complex books, like for example the ones that we were speaking about, like David Hopkins, it's just impossible, yeah, because you need to read, process, and integrate it. And also it depends in at what stage of life you are at now. Yeah, I think it depends on the book. Some books may be useful, just reading a summary, but the thing is that you need to integrate it. If you haven't integrated, and maybe you read one book summary of one book that really is worth reading it, yeah, reading it, taking notes, process, that book summary is going to hurt you because you think you know it, but you don't need absolutely anything. Yeah, so it's critical topic. Yeah, it's very interesting topic, and I think a very useful way, it should be have references of that book. Yeah, having references of that book of people who have certain wisdom, experience, have many reference models. Yeah, they can tell you, okay, that book is worth. That book is not worth, and you can skip 90%. So it depends.
I also believe that reading is a habit you build, just like doing sports, whatever sports you want to do, whether it's running or gym or anything you do, like you have to build the habit of doing it once a week, twice a week, 3 times a week. And then at the beginning is negotiable, right? Maybe I don't feel it this week, it's raining. And then at some point you are able to build it in your life, and you can regularly go do that sport twice a week or 3 times a week, 5 times a week, whatever you need, whatever you feel. And reading, I think it's a similar art. And I think what you're referring to is another art, which is the art of choosing what you read. Because of course, we don't have time in a lifetime to read all the books out there. So you have to be careful about what you choose to read. Also, some books can be negative for your mindset or too not the right time. Well, that's, I think, when often people abandon a book halfway is because naturally it's not for you or it's not the right time for you to read it. I often started books and then abandoned them halfway, and then some years later returned to them knowing like, wow, I left it right at the time that I could read and understand up until that moment. And now I think I have the tools and the understanding to continue to read. And there were some like additional ideas in that book. So I just found it like incredible that I just stopped it at that point in time. But yeah, I think it's interesting, this part, and especially with AI now, I feel we're entering this hacking lazy mindset, whereas like AI is a powerful tool, but it shouldn't just completely turn off your brain. For example, I believe many people use calculators. It's still good for you to understand how to do some basic addition and subtractions, and multiplication, right? Like the core principle of how mathematics works you should still use, even if, of course, if you're dividing, large multiple numbers together, of course, use a calculator. But so I think AI, I hope it doesn't become like this. Yeah, thanks, but I'll ask AI to summarize it. Or you wrote me this long email. I'm never going to read it. I'm just going to ask AI to put it into 5 bullet points. Maybe there were some interesting nuances that, or analogies or metaphors that were worth or artistically or stylistically important for you to share. I wanted to ask you something because maybe some of the people listening are not familiar with who is David Hawkins. David Richard Hawkins, I think is the full name. It's unfortunately is a man who passed away in early 2000, I think, or 2010, something. He was a famous American psychiatrist, but who is David Hawkins? Why did you mention him so many times in this episode today? Why is he important for you?
Yeah. I think that person is not just important for me, but for many people, because that person achieved the enlightenment. I mean, he reached a level like the one of Buddha or Jesus Christ, and that person was able to dissect the different conscious levels that are from the lowest ones, is like same anger, till the superior ones. It's a scale that is going up, like the temperature, yeah, 10 degrees, 20 degrees, 30, 40, 50, and it helps you to go through all of this. Yeah, it's like a roadmap, and for our rational mind, especially the one of Occident, is very useful. Yeah, because sometimes we see the spiritual side of the Orient, India, whatever. Yeah, and we see that very too abstract, too subjective. Yeah, and it helps you to put words to that abstract aspect and thematic. Yeah, that's why it's so useful for me, and especially because that person, he's very qualified. He was a doctor, a psychiatrist, and helped many people. Yeah, and also his teachings has been very how to say, they've been proven. Yeah, and have been very useful for people. Also many facilitators, integrators, therapists, they have used those teachings to help others transcend their suffering, and also to have more functional point of views for their lives.
I think his most famous book was Letting Go, if I'm not wrong.
Yeah.
And that's definitely his bestseller, most famous one. And the first one I also read, great. He wrote many books, and for anyone who's curious about who David Hawkins is, there's also many videos about him when he was alive talking on YouTube. So if you want to just get familiarized about what he says or how he says it and who he is, you can check his Wikipedia page, and also his YouTube videos are very interesting. I mean, you can find all of his books on Amazon. Sadly, just in a few languages. I think his books were translated mostly just in Spanish and in
English.
English. Of course, his native language. I'm Italian myself, so I tried to buy some of his books in Italian, and I couldn't find any translation in Italian. Can you believe it? So, and I think if I'm not wrong, he's still considered among the top 10 most influential spiritual voices of this century. So, and that list contains both people that are alive now and people of the past. So, it's a very interesting person to look into. Letting Go, definitely a great read if you haven't if you haven't if you haven't heard it. How do you feel, Carlos? Should we start to wrap up, or would you like to ask a few more questions before we go?
Yeah,
What
I
do you feel?
think it has been very good conversation, but so that people can be more, how to say, more excited about new topics. I think we'll stop
Yeah.
for today, and we will keep in a new one soon.
Yeah, and if you're curious about, any other topics, please write in the comments below any questions, any topics you would like us to discuss. If you'd like to come as a guest and talk about something you're particularly passionate about or curious about, um, please let us know. Write your comments and add your LinkedIn account or your X account so we can check you out. It would be very cool to have more guests on your podcast as well. By the way, what is the name of your podcast? Did you find a name for your podcast? Should we look for one right now, live in the podcast, or you have one ready?
Well, a good question because I didn't think about it. I mean, this idea about the video, about this conversation, it was like a natural flow, like a conversation that we usually have in a normal day. We will see. We will see. We will see. At this
Okay.
moment, I will, for the moment, I don't know if I will upload it in a podcast that we will create or in my personal YouTube, but I will put your LinkedIn link in the description below,
Yeah.
and we
Very
will see.
happy. If anybody wants to reach out, just send me a message on LinkedIn and I'll be happy to chat. And yeah, I think Andrade Show seems like a nice name to me. I vote for that one. But yeah, looking forward to the next episodes. Thank you so much for having me today. I definitely enjoyed it and always enriching, thought-provoking conversations, food for thought, as they say in the US. And yeah, thank you for your time and wish you a beautiful day.
My pleasure. Have a beautiful day too.
Bye,
Bye.
everyone.